Today's daf is daf Yutes. We were discussing a pasuk at the very beginning of Tehillim. Ashri ha'ish asher lo halach b'tzas rishaim. And the Gemara here on the top of daf Yutes identifies that ish, who doesn't follow the counsel of the evil people, is Avram Avinu shelo halach b'tzas anshe dor haflog sherishaim hoy. Shenemar hava nivne lanu ir. So again, it's hard for us to even imagine a Havamina that Avram Avinu would be part of the Dor HaFlaga, but then, their initial motivation, and Avram was part of that society. And then the end of this pasuk in Tehillim says, "B'derech Rishonim lo amad, shelo amad b'midas stom." That's even more difficult. To praise, give a pat on the back to Avram Avinu because he didn't participate in Stom, who were the most evil people on the face of the planet, probably in history. Shechatoim hayu, shenever v'yanshe stom roim v'chatoim lashem ma'od. So again, this is a difficulty that I find in understanding this Gemara. You have to praise Avram Avinu in the pasuk at the beginning of Tehillim, the kickoff of Tehillim, because he did not participate in the assemblage of stone. Now, the end of the pasuk, that's already a little bit more understandable. Moshav leitzim lo yoshav, the powerful influence of society at that time of Avram was that of the Plishtim. They had, in that area of Canaan, they had, dominion, and they were full of leitzanus. And the Torah seems to indicate that in a number of places, so that Avram Avinu is considered Moshav leitzim lo yoshav Moshav anshe Plishtim. He didn't associate Avram Avinu with the Plishtim, which was called Mipnei Sheleitzonim Hayu. And as we said yesterday, Leitzonus is a very powerful negative influence. It means cynicism, scoffing, making fun of other people, belittling them, that kind of attitude, which is sort of typical of a Letz, that he sits back and he says, "Oh, I can criticize anyone that I want," in a very cynical way. And that's a very contagious disease. Shenemar, how do we know that Avram Avinu distance himself from the people of Plishtim? Vayhi kitov libam, when their hearts grew merry. Vayomu kiru l'shimshon v'yisachek lanu. Again, the pasuk itself that the Gemara is quoting, which is a pasuk in Shoftim, has nothing to do with Avram Avinu per se, but it's just a proof text to describe the personality of Plishtim, of that nation, as Leitzonis, right? They wanted to take Shimshon and make him into a tzchok. And the concept of tzchok, which is also called la'ag, is typical of a letz. We go on. Ashrei ish yorei es Hashem. Why does it say ish? Ashrei ish, praiseworthy is a man who fears Hashem. V'lo ashrei isha? Are we excluding a woman who is not praiseworthy for being a God-fearing woman? No, that's not what it means. Amarav Amram Amarav Ashrei misha osa tshuva kshu ish. There are different times in a person's life when he could do tshuva. The best time, says Rav, is in a person's manhood, meaning in his youth, when he is full of the strength of manhood. And the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva that a real tshuva shlema, a gmura, is when you're put in the same situation and temptation and you overcome the evil inclination. Obviously, if you're an old man, then your tshuva cannot possibly be a tshuva gemura because you don't have those same intense passions that you had as a youth. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omar, Ashrei Mishim is Gabriel Yiso Keish. Notice the word ish indicates strength, power, and how fortunate is a person who can muster up all his power to do tshuva and overcome the evil inclination, because the evil inclination gets stronger and stronger with the passage of time. And the next part of the pasuk says, "B'mitzvosov chafetz miod." Now, the emphasis here is on mitzvos sav, meaning his will. Rabbi Elazar, b'mitzvos sav, below b'schar mitzvos sav. You might say, I'm motivated to do the will of God, not because it's his will, but because he will duly reward me for fulfilling his will. And Hayu Desnan, we have a Mishnah in Masechta Avos of Antignos each Sochoya Omer Al Tiu Kavodim Msham Shesarav Al Manaslik Havel Pras Ella Heyu Kavodim Msham Shesarav Shalom Manaslik Havel Pras. You're motivated by the fact that this is the mitzvah, the will of God, and you're not looking for reward. Again, the reward is there to have, and you'll be very happy to have it, but that's not why you do the mitzvah. The actual mitzvah is done because you're an Eved Hashem. And an Eved fulfills the will of his master, whether he likes it, he doesn't like it, whether he explains it, he understands it, and he doesn't understand it, it's all the same. He's an Eved. Moshe Rabbeinu is called the Eved Hashem. We have to take Moshe Rabbeinu as the paradigm of being an Eved, and our shimush, our service to Hashem is Shalom Manaslik Havel Pras. Hence it says mitzvosov velo schar mitzvosov. Again, I re-emphasize, there's nothing wrong in possible treif about wanting to get a reward, but that's not the main motivation. We are here to fulfill the will of God and to give all of our energies for the mitzvah Hashem. Again, the pasuk says, Ki im b'toras Hashem cheftzo. So where is his desire? What are his goals in life? And the answer is, says the pasuk, b'toraso. But keep in mind that sometimes the pasuk says b'toraso, which means it's my Torah. Other times it says b'toras Hashem, it's his Torah. Ein adam lo me Torah el mimakom shel libo chafetz. Now, the drasha of Rebbe is emphasizing the word chefto. Chefto means it's his desire, his with a small h. And that means he should learn the Torah and the segment of Torah that speaks to his heart, libo chafetz. Shenema ki im b'toras Hashem cheftzo. Now, after he studies Torah, as we'll soon see later, then it becomes his own Torah. But right now, at the first stage, it's Toras Hashem. So let's say you'll have two Amoraim, as we'll soon see in the Gemara. One wants to learn Mishlei, the other wants to learn Tilim. Each one should learn his own, because that's where his Libo Chafetz. And if the Rebbe wants to learn Masechta Yevamos, but the students want to learn Masechta Kedushin, then according to some Mefarshim, this statement of Rav means that the Rebbe, the teacher, should kowtow to the desire of his Talmidim. I didn't see that by my Rebbe. He used to ask us at the end of the year what we want to learn the next year, and whatever we told him, you knew that was not the Masechta he would choose for the next year. Anyway, Levi for Abshim Rabbi, Yasve Kami the Rebbe, Koposki, Sidra. So they finished one section of the Torah, and now they had to decide what to go on and learn in the next section of the Torah. Solik Sifra. When they completed that Sefer, Levi Omer Laisul on Mishlei. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Omar Laisul on Tilim. Each one wanted to learn. This one wanted to learn Tilim. This one wanted to learn Mishlei. And Kfuye Levi. Somehow, Rabbi Shimon prevailed over Levi, and V'yaisu Tilim, and therefore they brought Tehillim. Ki matu hacha, when they got into the pasuk, Ki im b'toras Hashem cheftzo, at the beginning of Tilim, Pirish Rebbe V'yomer, Rebbe interpreted this pasuk of cheftzo as referring to lo meid el makom shel chavetz. Amal Levi, Rebbe nasan li rishus lamed. I'm out of here. Rebbe gave me permission because he told me that a person learns Torah what he wants to learn. You're teaching me Mishlei, I want to learn Psalms. I'm out of here. Rav Avini Baruch Hama Kolosik b'Torah Hagarish Baruch Hu Solo Chafotzav Shenever Ki Im b'Toras Hashem Chefto. Now the word Chefto means not the chefetz, the desire of the person who's studying, but rather it's the Torah of Hashem, and the interest here lies in the Torah of Hashem. So what I want to do is I want to fulfill the will of God, the Chayvetz of Hashem, and in turn, which is called Kemayim Panim El Panim, God will attend to my chafatzim. And probably what this is a reference to is Olam Haba. Amar Rav, Liolam Yilmod Adam Torah Makvav Shalibo Chafetz. A person should always try to learn Torah in the place that his heart desires. Right? That's why we say V'sein Chelkenu B'Sorasach. Each person has his own chelik in Torah, and he probably learned that chelik when he was a fetus in his mother's womb. But now, when he stands on 2 feet, he should look and seek out that part of the Torah that he really wants to learn. In the case of Daf Yomi, that's very difficult to do. The Amar Rava said further, B'tchila nikreis al shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right, at first it's called Torah Hashem, Ulbasof, but eventually, after the student has delved deeply into Torah, he made a kinyan of Torah, and he acquired Torah, Nikris al Shmo, Shenever Torah Hashem Chefzo, and then it says in the same pasuk, Torah so, Yege Yom V'Layla. It became Torah so, at the end of the day, after he absorbed his learning, he understood his learning, he delved deeply into his learning, it became a part of him. It's now Torah so. V'yomar Rava said further, V'olam yilmad adam Torah, v'achkat yege. Yege refers to the deeper study, we call it iyun, when a person meditates on Torah, analyzes the Torah, dissects it. But first, before he gets that level, he's got to master the Torah, meaning on a superficial level. Here's where Daf Yomi might come in. But again, Daf Yomi is important only if at the end of the day it becomes a yege. It's got to be yege. V'hadav Torah so yege. Amar Rava, further Rava says, Liolam ligros inish afal gav de mishkach. A person should continue learning even though he's very frustrated. Why is he frustrated? Because he doesn't remember what he learned. Like test me now on Maseches Shavuos, that we just finished not long ago, 2 weeks ago. And, I'm hard-pressed to remember. So I give up. Says Rava, don't give up. Even though he doesn't remember, he doesn't really understand, but nevertheless, Shenemar Garsa Nafshi L'Sava. The word Garsa refers to the first superficial level of learning, and the Torah advocates Garsa, that you should even study, David Amel says, even study the Torah on a level of Garsa. Garsa, Tachana means tchina, to grind something, means to think over and over, turn it inside out, crush it down, break it down to its component parts, classify it, analyze it, dissect it. And first, you need Garsa. So Garsa really is the first stage, but it's an absolute critical necessary stage. And then the latest stage, the following stage, is going to be Toraso after Yege, when he delves deeply and he makes a kinyan on his Torah. Rava Rami Ksiv Al Gape. One pasuk seems to indicate, and this is a pasuk also in Tillim, is it not? Just 1 second. No, this pasuk is in Mishlei, and it's a description of Chachma, right, of wisdom. And it says that Al-Gape means on the Gapayim are the wings, on top of the wings, till you reach the heights. Uksiv Al-Kisei. But another pasuk says, also in Mishlei, then a few psukim later in the same chapter, that it's upon a chair. So is it climbing up the mountain to the heights, or is it on a chair? So Rava suggests the following yishuv. He says, B'tchila, when he starts to study the Torah, it's al-gape. In other words, at the outset, a student of Torah sits upon wings. He goes from town to town, Rashi says, in search of teachers, but finally settles down on one scholar and accepts him as his teacher, and then it's al-kisei, it's a permanent chair. He's no longer migrating from town to town. Another stira says, Rav Ksiv Barosh Meromim, it means that we're going all the way up to the top, and Uksiv Halei Derech. But yet, later on in the pasuk, it says that she stands upon the way. So you're not really going atop all the way to the heights, but rather you're standing on the ground. And this is a stira in a pasuk in Mishlei. And Rava resolves the stira, and he says, "B'tchila at the first stage, when he's studying just on a superficial level, is Barosh Maromim. The Torah seems to be so high that he's got to climb all the way up to the heights. But eventually, when he becomes a scholar, and then all the questions that he has, he knows how to answer, then it's Ale Derech. Then it's upon the way. Ula had a different contradiction. Ksiv shesei mayami borecha. Right now, water in a cistern is limited. Right? There's a certain amount of volume of water that could be contained in that receptacle. And this whole idea of Mayim is Torah, Mayim is wisdom. Uksiv, but another pasuk says, "V'nozli mitoch be'erecha." Be'erecha is be'er, is a well. So on the one hand, the Torah and the water of Torah is compared to a cistern. On the other hand, it's compared to a well. Ula says there's no steer. Why? B'tchilash seimi borecha. At the outset, on the first level, when you want to comprehend the Torah that you receive from others, it should only be like mayim in a cistern. It's finite. It's a body of wisdom that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But l'basof, once he's able to delve deeper and deeper into Torah, he's able to be mechadish chidushim. It's a wellspring of original wisdom, and it's flowering water upon his well. So the ultimate goal is that the Torah should be like a be'er, an endless spring. And I would add another point over here, that the idea of a be'er, a spring, is something that comes from within himself itself. In other words, bar means you take water from here and you put it in here. So the bar is not an original source, but a be'er, when it's constantly, there's a constant flow or draw of spring water, that's something that you take from within yourself, and it's an endless capacity for chidush, for creativity. Amar Rav Huna, my dechsiv, what does the pasuk mean when it says in Mishlei again, Hon mehevel yimad v'kovetz al yad yarba, wealth gained by vanity, meaning dishonesty, will diminish, but that which is gained by gradually laboring will increase. And this whole pasuk is referring to wisdom, to Torah. Im osam Torah chavilos. If he takes the Torah and he studies it in segments, every day he takes he takes another chapter and he wants something new, then mismait. Ultimately, his learning is going to diminish. But im kovetz al yad. But if he takes small portions of Torah and kovetz means he integrates them, and now by reviewing everything that he learned in smaller portions, he now integrates them into one whole, is yarba, then his learning will increase. Amar Rava, yadi rabbanan laha milsa v'avriale. Even though this teaching of Rav Huna is very famous, everybody knows about it, but everybody violates it. They study a little portion here and a little portion here, and they go on and on and on every day with a new chiddush, a new area of Torah, and they never bother taking the time to integrate it all into one whole by studying it in depth. I myself practiced what Rav Huna recommended, which means that I studied small parts of Torah, but in order to integrate them into one whole, and became biyadi, and now the Torah was successful. Now, in the law of Talmud Torah, there are two dimensions. There's one dimension called the Isa Shicha, which means the requirement to retain your Torah and not forget it. And then there's another dimension to understand the Torah, Yediyas HaTorah. So you can analyze our sugya over here in both directions, in both classifications. It could be that this halacha is halacha in Yedias HaTorah of Isur Shichacha, that, if you labor hard and delve deeply into each small section of the Torah, taking a piecemeal until you integrate the whole, then you'll remember your Torah. Or maybe what he has in mind, Rav Huna, is this is the way to understand the Torah. Because if you learn a new segment every day, you flood, like a bird, you flutter around from one section of the Torah to another, you'll never understand the Torah. Rav Shizbi. Anybody know what the word Shizbi means? I don't know. There was a Rebbe in the high school I went to. His name was Shizbi. I'm not sure what the word Shizbi means. Anyway, Mishmei de Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. My Dechsid. What does the pasuk mean again in Mishlei? Lo yachroch remia sido. A deceitful hunter will not roast his catch. Lo yichla v'yoyarech yomim tzayed haramai. A deceiving hunter will not live a long life. This is all an illusion for Torah study. If he studies Torah in order to impress others, that's deceitful. But he's not trying to really understand the Torah, he's not trying to retain the Torah, then he's not going to merit a long life. And the comparison to a hunter is a hunter fabricates and boasts about the many birds he has snared when actually he caught nothing. A student forgets his learning and thereby shortens his life. Because kihem chayenu v'yorach yomenu. So orach yomenu is because it's the Torah that we've acquired. Rav Sheshes Omar, he has a different take on this pasuk. Sayed harama yachroch. And you read it with a question: will a cunning hunter not snare and roast his catch? Surely a hunter who employs guile and subterfuge will succeed in snaring many birds. And by analogy, a Talmud Chacham who employs careful methodology and he learns very slowly and methodically, he'll retain his learning. Kiyasar Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Omar, he declared, Mashal li adam shetzad tziporim. I'll give you an analogy to a person who shoots down birds. So he has two choices. Choice number one is Mishaber Kanafeshal Rishona. He's very smart, right? He's Roes Hanolan. He breaks the wings of the first bird that he traps, so that now when he's involved and dedicated to trapping a second bird, the first bird can't fly away because he already broke its wings. Is kulam is kaimus biyadav lav. But if, on the other hand, he catches bird number one and he allows it to remain in its natural state, then ein miskaimus biyadav. By the time he gets to the second bird that he's involved in and hunting down, the first bird is going to fly the coop. Next, again a pasuk in Tehillim, v'haya ke'etz shasul al pagi mayim. All right, now here we have to point out the difference between what's called a netiya and a shesila. Right, netiya means when you plant something, and it's specifically a tree is planted with a netiya. And shasul is something that sort of floats along the water. Like you've seen sometimes in a river, you'll see that there are branches of a tree that, go from, the higher parts to the lower parts. Now, the word v'haya here is a reference to someone who desires Torah, and he's going to be keit shasul al palge mayim. And what does that mean? I'm the Rav Yanai. Ke'eit shasul v'lo ke'etz natua. Eitz natua means he is anchored in one place, and he never leaves that one place. He's a Talmud of Rabbi X, and he never leaves Rabbi X's presence. That's the only Rebbe on the face of the earth. However, there's something called Eitz Shasul. As we said before, floats and goes from one Rebbe to another Rebbe. If he focuses totally on one Rebbe and is exclusive and studies only at the feet of that Rebbe, then he gets one particular derech, but he doesn't get the shimush, the perspective on the broadness of Torah that he could get if he was mishamish a second Talmud Chacham as well. And I always quote Sichot Musar of Chaim Shmulevitz, and in Reb Chaim Shmulevitz he makes a big deal about this. For example, Ben Azai said that he wasn't Mishamish Rabbi Shmuel. Had he been Mishamish Rabbi Shmuel, he would have been that much greater, even though Ben Azai was the greatest in his generation. So the idea is to be like a bee that goes from flower to flower and tries to see what is unique that you have to offer me, and try to study and delve into the mindset of that Rebbe and then another Rebbe. Each Rebbe has something to add, a new dimension, until the picture is complete. Amalu Rav Chisda Rabbanan, this is a funny Gemara. Be'ina de ema lechu milsa. I want to tell you something. Mistafina de shavkuli ve'azlisu. He tells his students that if he tells them what he's about to tell them, which is something he wants to tell them, they're going to all pack out. So I'm afraid to tell it to you. So the students were learning by Rav Chisda. They heard Rav Chisda pontificate that you should get another Rebbe. Ishavkua, they all dropped out. The Ozil Kame de Rabba. They went to learn by Rabba. Amalu Rabba says to them, no. Hani Mili, when is it true that you should go from flower to flower and you should absorb from different Rebbeim, multiple Rebbeim, not from one Rebbe? That's only Svara. That's only when you get to the level in which you're already fluent in everything, you know all the Girsa, and you want to delve into the analysis, the logic, and the Derech HaLibud, then go from one Rebbe to the other. But Aval Gemara, Meirav Echad Adif. But when you're talking about Girsa, Gemara, it means the text itself, and how to interpret it, how to read it. Then it's better that you stay with one Rebbe until you master the text. Then you could go on to delve first in that Rebbe and then another Rebbe. And then we're up to Ki Hechi.